All right, let's talk about something that works behind the scenes on your network. You've got routers, switches, printers, but have you ever stopped to think about how they prove they are who they say they are? Well, that's where a little-known hero called the Network Device Enrollment Service, or NDES, steps in. Today we're going to pull back the curtain and demystify this really important service. So let's start with the fundamental question, right? Your network is packed with these essential devices. We're talking routers, firewalls, IP cameras, you name it. The thing is, they don't have user accounts. They don't log into a domain like your laptop does. So how on earth do they get the digital security certificates they absolutely need to communicate safely?
And that really is the heart of the problem. It's all about building a chain of trust, but in a world where you don't have the usual credentials to build it with.
And trust me, this is a huge deal. The very backbone of your network could be operating on what's kind of like an honor system. Without a trusted certificate, these devices are basically strangers, and they can't properly prove their identity for critical tasks. This leaves a massive gaping hole in your security posture.
So what's the solution? Well, Microsoft's answer is a service that acts like a diplomat, a trusted ambassador for your network. So let's meet this ambassador, the Network Device Enrollment Service.
So what is NDS really? On paper, it's a role service and Active Directory certificate services. But a much better way to think about it is as a designated registration authority. It's this trusted go-between that lets all those network devices securely ask for and, more importantly, receive certificates from your main certificate authority.
Now, NDS doesn't just make this stuff up on its own. It uses an industry-standard protocol called SCEP, the Simple Certificate Enrollment Protocol. You can think of SCEP as the universal language for getting certificates. And using this standard is absolutely key, because it ensures everything is compatible and secure across a whole world of different devices.
When you boil it down, NDS really has three core jobs. First, it's the gatekeeper. It creates these single-use passwords so an admin can approve a device. Then it turns into a courier, taking the device's request and formally submitting it to the certificate authority. And finally, it completes the delivery, picking up the shiny new certificate and bringing it back to the device that asked for it.
Okay, so that's the what. Now let's get into the how. We're going to walk through this whole process step by step, from the very first request all the way to a successfully delivered certificate. Oh wait, before we dive into the journey, you have to understand this one critical detail. NDS actually uses two totally separate web addresses, or endpoints. There's a special one just for the administrator to get that password, and a completely different one for the device to make its enrollment request. This separation is a really smart and fundamental part of its security design.
And here it is, the whole journey mapped out. It all kicks off when an administrator grabs that one-time password. They use it to configure the network device. The device then sends its request over to NDS. Now here's the magic. NDS checks out the request, signs it to basically vouch for the device, and then passes it along to the certificate authority. The CA does its thing and issues the certificate. And in the final step, the device circles back to NDS to pick up its new digital ID. See how clean and secure that handoff is at every single stage? It's pretty slick.
All right, for all you network admins out there, let's take a quick peek behind the curtain. We're going to look at a couple of key details you'll need to know when you're actually setting this thing up.
Okay, first things first. NDES isn't some standalone program you just click and run. It's actually an ISAPI extension, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a plugin for Microsoft's web server, IIS. A good way to think about it is that IIS is the stage, and NDES is one of the performers. You gotta have the stage built before the show can start.
Now, when you're setting this up, you're going to come to a fork in the road. You have to decide on the identity for the NDS service. You've got two main options here. You can create a special, dedicated service account, which gives you really fine-tuned control or permissions, but, it's a bit more to manage. Or you can use the computer's own built-in identity. That's simpler to set up for sure, but you get less granular control. Okay, let's zoom back out and tie this all together. Why should you actually care about all this? Well, because this service has a direct, and I mean direct, impact on both how scalable your network is and how secure it is, at a fundamental level. So what's the bottom line? It's simple. NDS closes a really dangerous security gap. It gives you a safe and scalable way to hand out certificates to all those devices that can't just log in and ask for one. And that is what lets them establish trusted, encrypted connections for things like IPSec sessions. Ultimately, it just makes your entire network safer and stronger.
Look, NDS is really the unsung hero that gives every single one of those devices a trusted identity. strengthening a link in your security chain that's so often overlooked. But that leaves us with one last question to chew on. Now that you know how to secure this link, what's the next weakest link in your network's chain of trust? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.